Today we're diving into a really provocative analysis of what a conflict between the US and Iran could look like. But instead of just looking at the daily headlines, this uses the cold, hard logic of game theory to figure out what might happen. It's a fascinating way to look at things, so let's get right into it.
So, according to the source material we're breaking down, the entire outcome of a potential war, and you could argue the future of the world, really boils down to the answers to just 3 critical questions. That's it, just 3.
All right, so what are these 3 questions that carry so much weight? Let's take a look at the first one, which is a decision that could really change everything.
First up, is the United States actually going to launch a ground invasion? Now, the source we're looking at argues that this is basically the point of no return. See, with an air war, you can still pull back, de-escalate, but a ground invasion, that's a whole different beast. It could be catastrophic, maybe trapping the US there for a decade, and this is a huge deal, requiring a national draft to even make it work.
The second question, well, it taps into a fear we all have. Will nuclear weapons be used? I mean, using nukes would break a global taboo that's somehow held strong since the end of World War II. The source makes it clear that if this line gets crossed, we're not just talking about a regional war anymore. We're risking a potential nuclear apocalypse.
And the third question is about a single building, but one with profound global significance, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's the third holiest site for nearly 2 billion Muslims. At the same time, some religious extremists believe it's built on the site of their ancient temple and are desperate to rebuild. So its destruction, as the source notes, could ignite a massive worldwide religious conflict.
Okay, so we have the 3 questions. But here's where this analysis gets really interesting. It doesn't just ask them, it actually uses game theory to predict the answers. And the predictions are pretty startling.
So according to this game theory breakdown, here are the answers. US ground invasion? Yes. Use of nuclear weapons? No. And destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque? Yes. It's a shocking set of predictions, right? But maybe the most surprising one of all is that firm no on using nukes.
And the author of this analysis really puts it all on the line. They say, point blank, for this whole theory to work, they have to be right on all 3 predictions. If even just one is wrong, the entire framework just collapses. That's some serious conviction.
So you've got to be asking, how on earth do you arrive at those conclusions? Especially the idea that a massive ground war is likely, but a nuclear strike isn't. Well, the answer, according to the source, is all in a military concept called the escalation ladder.
The escalation ladder is really the whole engine for this game theory model. It asks you to picture a conflict not as a single big explosion, but as climbing a ladder. You go up rung by rung, and each step gets more and more intense. And the key thing is, in this game, you can't just magically jump to the top rung. You have to climb there, one step at a time.
Now, conventional wisdom, right, it usually talks about escalation dominance. That's the idea that whoever has the most powerful weapon, the nuclear bombs, has the ultimate advantage and should win. Simple. But the source here makes a really bold claim. That whole theory is flawed. Just because you have the biggest weapon in the room doesn't automatically mean you control what happens.
To really help us get this, the source uses a simple but honestly a brilliant analogy that we can all understand. A street fight. Let's see how this plays out.
I mean, think about it. A street fight doesn't just start with a gunshot out of nowhere. It starts small, right? A bump, a misunderstanding. Then it starts climbing that ladder. There's cursing, then maybe some pushing, then the first punches are thrown. The knife and the gun, they only come out at the very end, after you've already climbed all those other rungs.
And here is the absolutely crucial part. The fight isn't just between the 2 people involved. There's a crowd watching, and their opinion actually matters. There are the police, the authorities, who are going to show up and decide who is in the right and who is in the wrong. And for a lot of people, there's a higher moral judgment too. There are always other players and other factors in the game.
So if it's not just about who has the bigger gun, then what is it? What's really pushing people up that ladder, rung by painful rung, toward total conflict? The source argues it all comes down to 3 things. Emotions, specifically that rush of adrenaline that forces you to go step by step. Power, which is the raw physical reality of the confrontation itself. And reason. That's the story each side tells themselves and everyone else to justify what they're doing. It's this messy human cocktail, not some cold, clean logic that's really calling the shots.
And this right here, this is the absolute core of the entire argument. You just don't go from a verbal insult straight to pulling out your ultimate weapon.
Your own adrenaline, your human psychology, it forces you up the ladder one step at a time. In game theory, skipping all those steps is actually an irrational move. Why? Because it hands all the control over to those other players, the crowd, the authorities, who are going to judge your totally disproportionate response. And this is why, in this theory, a nation can't just jump straight to using its ultimate weapon. It has to climb the rungs first, rungs that look a lot like a ground invasion.
So all of this leaves us with a final, pretty chilling question to think about. When we look at conflict through this lens, driven by adrenaline, emotion, and this constant need to justify ourselves, is the act of climbing that ladder, is it ever really a rational choice? Or are we just passengers on a ride we can't actually control?